The breaking point Captain Alina Vasquez stared at the holographic display floating above her desk, her coffee growing cold as the words burned into her mind. Trade embargo, immediate effect. Galactic Council Resolution 847, the pale blue text, seemed to mock her as she read it for the 5th time, hoping somehow the words would change. They didn't. Her office aboard the merchant vessel Horizon's Dream felt smaller now, the metal walls pressing in like a coffin. Outside the viewport Earth, hung in the distance, a blue marble that suddenly seemed more vulnerable than beautiful. Alina had spent 15 years hauling cargo between human colonies and alien worlds, building the trade relationships that kept humanity fed and supplied. Now, with a single vote, the Galactic Council had severed those lifelines. The communication panel chimed. Elena's first officer, James Park, appeared on screen, his usually calm demeanor cracked with worry. "Captain, we're getting reports from across the fleet. Every human-registered vessel has been ordered to return to Earth space immediately. Number? Exceptions. What's their reasoning?" Alina asked, though she already knew the answer would be worse than useless. James glanced at his datapad. "They're calling us an aggressive species, unsuitable for peaceful galactic commerce." Ambassador Thull gave a speech about protecting civilized worlds from human influence. Elena's hands clenched into fists. Ambassador Corinthal, the Zentaur representative who had smiled and shaken hands with human diplomats for years while apparently planning this betrayal. She had met him once at a trade summit, found him charming and intelligent. Now she wondered if he had been studying humanity's weaknesses the entire time. The next few hours brought a flood of desperate communications from across human space. Colony administrators begging for medical supplies that would never come. Mining stations running low on replacement parts for life support systems. Agricultural worlds that depended on alien manufactured fertilizers watching their crops wither. Alina found herself thinking about her daughter, Maria, safe in her university dormitory on Mars. At least she was in human space, protected from whatever madness was consuming the galaxy. The thought provided little comfort as reports continued streaming in. Dr. Sarah Mitchell's face appeared on Elena's private channel. The scientist's usually neat appearance disheveled. "Alina, thank God I reached you. Are you seeing the casualty projections?" "I'm trying not to look at them," Alina admitted. She had served 10 years in the Earth Defense Force before becoming a merchant captain. She knew how to read military assessments, which made the numbers even more terrifying. "The outer colonies have maybe 6 months of supplies if they ration strictly," Sarah continued. "The medical stations will run out of critical medications in weeks." "This isn't just economic warfare, Alina. This is genocide with paperwork." Alina closed her eyes, remembering her military training. Rule 1. When diplomacy fails, you prepare for war. Rule 2. Never let the enemy choose when and where you fight. The Galactic Council had just violated both principles by assuming humanity would simply accept slow extinction. "Sarah, do you still have contacts in the underground networks?" The scientist's eyes sharpened. "You mean the Ghost Fleet project? I thought that was just rumors." "Admiral Chenwei doesn't deal in rumors," Alina said carefully. "If what I've heard is true, some people saw this coming and prepared accordingly." After Sarah signed off, Alina sat alone with her thoughts. The Ghost Fleet. Whispers had circulated for years about decommissioned military officers secretly converting civilian vessels into warships. Admiral Chenwei, a brilliant strategist who had been forced into early retirement for aggressive tendencies, supposedly led the effort. Alina had dismissed it as paranoid fantasy. Now she hoped it was real. Her personal communicator buzzed with an encrypted message. The sender was listed as an anonymous freight coordinator, but Alina recognized the code patterns from her military days. Admiral Chen was reaching out to former officers like herself. The message was simple. Meeting tonight, Warehouse 7, Lunar City. Time to discuss alternative shipping routes. Alina made her decision. She programmed the Horizon's Dreams autopilot for Luna and tried to get some rest. Sleep wouldn't come. Instead, she found herself remembering the war games she had participated in during her military service. Scenarios where Earth faced overwhelming odds against alien coalitions. Every simulation had ended the same way, humanity fighting with desperate creativity against superior numbers. The difference was that those had been games. This was real. Warehouse 7 sat in Lunar City's industrial district, a massive structure that officially stored mining equipment. Alina arrived to find nearly 200 former military personnel gathered in the shadows between cargo containers. Admiral Chen Wei stood at the center, his weathered face grim but determined. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chen began, his voice carrying easily through the warehouse. "The Galactic Council has just declared war on humanity." They were polite about it, used legal language and trade regulations, but the intent is clear. They want us gone. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Alina recognized faces from her old unit, people she had trusted with her life during border skirmishes with pirates and separatists. They looked older now, marked by civilian lives, but their eyes held the same hard resolve she remembered. Now, "Our government will try diplomacy," Chen continued. "They'll file protests, request hearings, appeal to alien concepts of justice and fair play. It won't work. The Council made this decision knowing exactly what it would cost us. They want us to beg, to prove we're not the aggressive monsters they claim we are." Dr. Sarah Mitchell stepped forward from the crowd. "Admiral, the casualty projections are devastating. We don't have time for a prolonged conflict, which is why we won't have one," Chen replied. He gestured, and a holographic display showed the layout of Galactic Council space. For the past 8 years, a network of former military personnel has been preparing for this exact scenario. We've converted merchant vessels into warships, established hidden supply depots, and infiltrated alien shipping networks. Alina felt her pulse quicken. The ghost fleet was real. "The enemy thinks they know us," Chen said. "They see our diplomatic cause, our peaceful trade missions, our cultural exchanges. They think we're soft because we choose cooperation over conquest. They're about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war." A former Marine colonel named Marcus Stone raised his hand. "What's the objective, Admiral?" "Revenge. Survival," Chen answered immediately. "We're going to make the cost of this embargo so high that the Council begs us to resume trade. We'll target their shipping, their infrastructure, their economic lifelines. Every alien who voted for our extinction will learn what it means to go hungry." Alina found her voice. "Sir, what about civilian casualties?" Chen's expression softened slightly. "We're not them, Captain Vasquez. We don't murder innocents to make political points, but we will destroy every trade route, every supply depot, every economic asset that supports their war against us. They want to see human aggression. We'll give them a masterclass." The planning session lasted until dawn. Alina learned that the Ghost Fleet consisted of nearly 300 vessels, everything from converted cargo haulers to rebuilt destroyer escorts. More importantly, they had something the aliens didn't expect: intimate knowledge of galactic Trade networks. For 15 years, human merchants had been the galaxy's most reliable shippers. They knew every route, every depot, every weakness in the system that was now being used to strangle them. That knowledge would become a weapon. As the meeting broke up, Alina found herself assigned to command a converted freighter called the Iron Resolve. The ship looked like a standard cargo hauler from the outside, but concealed military-grade weapons and armor beneath civilian plating. She would lead a squadron of similar vessels in attacks on alien supply lines. On the flight back to Earth space, Alina received a personal message that shattered her growing confidence. The text was brief, clinical in its cruelty. Regret to inform you that Maria Vasquez has died due to complications from acute appendicitis. Medical supplies to treat condition were unavailable due to current trade restrictions. Elena's daughter was dead, killed by alien bureaucrats who had never met her, never known her name, but had signed her death warrant with their votes. The girl who had wanted to be an engineer, who had laughed at Elena's stories about life in space, who had made her mother promise to stay safe during cargo runs to dangerous systems, gone because Ambassador Thul and his allies had decided humanity was too dangerous to deserve medical supplies. Something cold and terrible settled in Elena's chest. She understood now why Admiral Chen had looked so grim during his speech. This wasn't about trade or politics or galactic harmony. This was about a species that had chosen genocide and dressed it up as law. Alina opened a channel to Admiral Chen. "Sir, this is Captain Vasquez. I'm ready to begin operations immediately." Chen's voice was gentle but firm. "Alina, I heard about Maria. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you, sir. When do we start killing them?" A pause. "Then, tomorrow, Captain. Tomorrow we remind the galaxy why humans are dangerous." Alina closed the channel and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien politicians were congratulating themselves on their civilized solution to the human problem. They had no idea what was coming for them. The breaking point had been reached. Now came the breaking. The reckoning, 3 weeks after the embargo began. Ambassador Corinthal was enjoying his morning meal in his luxurious office aboard the Galactic Council station when his aide burst through the door. All pretense of protocol forgotten. "Ambassador, we have a problem," the young Zentari gasped, his normally pristine uniform wrinkled with sweat. The Kepler trade convoy never arrived at Centauri Prime. Thul set down his cup of imported tea, irritation flickering across his features. Mechanical failure, pirates, these things happen in space. "Sir, it's not just the Kepler convoy. 17 major shipping routes have gone dark in the past 72 hours. Cargo vessels are simply vanishing without distress signals." Now Thul paid attention. The galactic economy depended on the steady flow of goods between member worlds. Trade disruptions meant political pressure, and political pressure meant uncomfortable questions about his handling of the human situation. "Have our intelligence services identified the cause?" The aide's voice dropped to a whisper. "Sir, we think it's the humans." Thul laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Impossible. We've cut them off from advanced technology and military supplies. They're probably dying quietly in their little corner of space, just as we intended." What Ambassador Thul didn't know was that at that very moment, Captain Alina Vasquez was standing on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, watching alien cargo containers drift through space like metallic snow. Her ship and 5 others had just finished, systematically destroying a Zentari food convoy bound for their core worlds. Target eliminated, reported her weapons officer, Lieutenant Commander Torres. No survivors, no witnesses. Alina nodded, feeling nothing. The aliens aboard those freighters had been following orders, earning honest wages, supporting families. But their cargo would have fed the same politicians who had murdered her daughter. Sympathy was a luxury humanity could no longer afford. Signaled the fleet, she ordered. Move to intercept the medical supply convoy at grid reference 777. The hegemony worlds are about to learn what it feels like to watch their people die from treatable conditions. The Ghost Fleet had been operating for 3 weeks, and the results exceeded even Admiral Chen's projections. Human vessels, disguised as ordinary freighters, struck without warning across dozens of systems. They hit supply depots, destroyed cargo ships, and vanished before military patrols could respond. The aliens had made a crucial error in their assessment of humanity. They saw Earth's peaceful diplomatic overtures and assumed weakness. They noticed humanity's preference for trade over conquest and mistook it for inability. Most critically, they had allowed human merchants to integrate deeply into galactic commerce networks. Learning every vulnerability and weakness, Dr. Sarah Mitchell had been right about her people. Humans were dangerously good at logistics. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Chen Wei studied tactical displays showing the systematic collapse of alien trade routes. His plan was working better than he had dared hope, but success brought its own challenges. "Admiral," his communications officer announced, "we're receiving surrender offers from the Alterian Trade Consortium. They're willing to resume medical shipments to human colonies in exchange for protection of their vessels." Chen smiled grimly. The Alterians had been among the first to support the embargo, confident that their advanced technology made them untouchable. Now they were discovering that all the sophisticated weapons in the galaxy meant nothing if you couldn't get fuel to power them. "Tell them we'll consider their offer after they provide full reparations for the deaths their embargo has caused," Chen replied. "Until then, any Alterian vessel in space is a legitimate target." The real genius of the Ghost Fleet lay not in its firepower, but in its intelligence network. For years, human merchants had been the galaxy's most trusted shippers, privy to cargo manifests, shipping schedules, and security protocols. That information now guided precision strikes that crippled alien economies with surgical efficiency. Elena's squadron demonstrated this perfectly during their attack on the hegemony medical convoy. They knew exactly which containers held life-saving medications and which carried luxury goods. The medical supplies were captured intact and shipped to human colonies. Everything else burned. Captain Torres reported as they departed the debris field. "Long-range sensors are detecting a Council naval patrol moving to intercept us. 3 heavy cruisers, estimated arrival in 4 hours." Alina felt a familiar calm settle over her. The same feeling she had experienced during combat operations in her military days. The aliens were finally taking the threat seriously enough to deploy warships. Good. It was time to teach them another lesson about underestimating humans. "Signal Admiral Chen," she ordered. "Tell him we're about to field test the Prometheus Protocol." The Prometheus Protocol was Dr. Sarah Mitchell's masterpiece, a tactical innovation that exploited a fundamental flaw in alien military thinking. Council races had evolved on worlds where resources were abundant and conflict rare. They fought wars of attrition, relying on superior numbers and technology to overwhelm enemies. Humans had evolved on a world where everything was scarce and survival meant constant adaptation. They fought wars of innovation, turning weaknesses into strengths, and using enemy advantages against them. When the Council patrol arrived at the ambush site, they found what appeared to be a disabled human freighter drifting helplessly in space. Captain Zeth Kalla of the cruiser Righteous Purpose ordered his vessels to surround the crippled ship for capture and interrogation. Scan the vessel, Kalla ordered his tactical officer. I want to know how many humans are aboard and what weapons they're carrying, sir. Sensors show minimal power signatures. Single fusion reactor operating at emergency levels. No weapons detected. Kalor nodded with satisfaction. Finally, they would have proof of human piracy to present to the Council. The terrorist attacks would stop once the galaxy saw evidence of humanity's true nature. That was when the disabled freighter exploded, not destroyed by weapons fire, but deliberately detonated by its own crew in a massive nuclear blast that vaporized everything within 50 kilometers. The 3 Council cruisers, caught in perfect formation around their targets, were annihilated instantly. Alina watched the fireball fade from the bridge of the Iron Resolve, hidden behind a nearby asteroid field. The sacrifice ship had been crewed by volunteers, former military personnel who had lost family to the embargo. They had died to prove a point that would echo across the galaxy. Humans would rather destroy themselves than surrender. Message drone launched, Torres reported. The recording of their final transmission is en route to every major news network in Council space. That transmission would become legendary. Commander Lisa Chen, Admiral Chen's daughter, had broadcast her final words as the Prometheus Protocol activated to the Galactic Council and all who support them. You wanted to see human aggression. You wanted to know what we're capable of when you threaten our families. Remember this moment. Remember that we chose death over defeat, and know that there are thousands more like us coming for you. The psychological impact was devastating. Alien populations, comfortable in their belief that civilized beings valued survival above all else, suddenly faced an enemy that viewed death as just another tactical option. How do you negotiate with a species willing to die rather than lose? Ambassador Thol found himself facing increasingly desperate reports as the Ghost Fleet expanded its operations. Human raiders were hitting targets deep in Council space, somehow bypassing sophisticated defense networks and striking with impossible precision. How are they doing this? Thol demanded during an emergency session with Council military leaders. Our intelligence services insist they have no access to advanced technology. General Vex Marat, the hegemony's chief military strategist, looked exhausted. Ambassador, we've been approaching this incorrectly. We assumed human capabilities based on their visible technology. We didn't account for their tactical innovation. Explain. They're not using advanced weapons to defeat our defenses, Marat continued. They're using perfect intelligence to avoid our defenses entirely. Somehow, they know exactly where our patrols will be, what routes our cargo ships will take, which facilities have the weakest security. The truth was simpler than any alien strategist could imagine. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or firepower. It was 15 years of friendship. Human merchants had been welcomed throughout Council space, trusted with sensitive information, invited to social gatherings where alien officials spoke freely about military deployments and security protocols. All of that trust was now being weaponized with devastating efficiency. Dr. Sarah Mitchell coordinated the intelligence network from a hidden base in the asteroid belt, sorting through decades of accumulated data about alien capabilities and weaknesses. Every casual conversation her people had shared with alien colleagues became tactical intelligence. Every trade agreement contained clues about resource dependencies and supply vulnerabilities. Sarah, Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the encrypted communication link. How long can we maintain this pace of operations? Indefinitely, she replied, studying reports from across the galaxy. They trained us too well, Admiral. We know their systems better than they do. Every attempt to adapt just reveals new weaknesses we can exploit. But Alina, leading raids deep in enemy territory, understood that military success wasn't enough. The embargo continued, and human colonies were still dying slowly. They needed to force the Council to capitulate completely, not just modify the terms of humanity's extinction. That's when she proposed the unthinkable. Admiral Elena's voice was calm during the encrypted conference call with Ghost Fleet commanders. I request permission to target Council's civilian infrastructure directly. The silence stretched for long moments. Finally, Admiral Chen spoke. Alina, we agreed to avoid civilian casualties. Sir, with respect, they didn't extend us the same. Courtesy, my daughter was a civilian. Every child dying in our colonies is a civilian. If we're going to win this war, we need to make the Council populations understand what their leaders have done to us. Colonel Stone's voice joined the discussion. She's right, Admiral. Military strikes alone won't break their will. We need to make every alien citizen feel the cost of this embargo personally. Chen was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of command decisions that would define history. Very well, but we maintain our principles. Infrastructure only. Power plants, communication networks, transportation hubs. We cripple their civilization without murdering innocents. Understood, sir, Alina replied. But privately, she wondered if the distinction mattered. When the power went out in alien cities, people would die. When communication networks failed, emergency services would collapse. The line between military and civilian targets had blurred beyond recognition. The final phase of humanity's response began with coordinated strikes across Council space. Human raiders, operating with perfect knowledge of alien infrastructure vulnerabilities, systematically began dismantling the technological civilization that sustained billions of alien lives. Power plants went dark. Communications satellites fell silent. Transportation networks ground to a halt. Within days, Ambassador Thol's perfect office aboard the Council station was lit by emergency lighting, his imported tea replaced by recycled water. The young aide who had brought him reports of human raids now delivered increasingly desperate pleas from Council member worlds. Sir, the aide whispered, the Alterian homeworld is completely dark. No power, no communications. The hegemony capital is reporting mass riots as food distribution breaks down. The Zentari colonies are requesting immediate military assistance. Thol stared at the reports, finally understanding the magnitude of his miscalculation. The humans hadn't been weakened by the embargo. They had been transformed into something far more dangerous than the species the Council had feared. His personal communicator chimed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as Admiral Chen Wei, Human Defense Forces. The message was brief. Ambassador Thol, we are prepared to discuss terms for ending hostilities. You have 24 hours to respond before we begin targeting your homeworlds directly. Choose wisely. Thol's hands shook as he forwarded the message to the full Council. The vote to end the embargo was unanimous. Humanity had won. But Alina, watching alien cities go dark from the bridge of the Iron Resolve, wondered if victory felt this empty for everyone. Her daughter was still dead. The Ghost Fleet had shown the galaxy that humans were indeed as dangerous as the Council had feared. The only question now was whether anyone would ever trust them again. Asterisk.